Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keith Whittier, and thank you for joining me. This is my view from the 40, my opportunity to talk about things CFL and specifically things having to do today with the Ottawa REDBLACKS. Now, I know that we are just days away from the start of the 2014 playoffs, but before we look forward, I'd like to take a moment and look back at the inaugural season of the REDBLACKS. Now, first thing that we can talk about is their record, but we'll get to that in a moment. I have said that there are three things that are needed for a sports franchise to be successful. The three things being ownership, the fan base, and the team on the field. So let me review that as I review what this season looked like. So first of all, in terms of ownership, I've said it before, I'll say it again. You couldn't ask for better ownership. Jeff Hunt and his group were absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for bringing football back to the city. Now, in regards to the fan base, selling out 9 games in a row is absolutely amazing. I went into this season thinking to myself, this is going to be great, football's back. But one of the things that I didn't expect was as the season went on, so many calls, texts, Facebook messages, tweets from people saying, hey, can you help me get tickets? It looks like all the tickets are sold out. Do you know anybody who might be able to help me out with tickets? People who never really had a CFL conversation with me before, all of a sudden are wanting to come to this game and come to the stadium and cheer on this team. The other really cool thing is that, unfortunately, I come across a couple of naysayers that say, hey, you know what, football hasn't worked in the city before, it's probably not going to work now. And the fact of the matter is that one of the big reasons why it hasn't worked before is because we haven't had the strong ownership that would bring in the strong fan base. With the development of Lansdowne and us going to be seeing movie theaters and restaurants along the canal and shopping, it can only get better and better. So if you think this first season was something, wait for the next couple seasons. Now, the third thing that makes a team successful or a franchise successful is the team on the field. And if we look at the team on the field, then we say to ourselves, well, it was somewhat of a disappointing year. They won 2 games. Yes, they did win 2 games, 2 out of 18 regular season games. Now, when you're a losing team, there is lots of blame to go around. And the unfortunate thing is that some of that blame might be justified, but the way that I've always looked at it is you win as a team and you lose as a team. Now, Henry Burris is pretty much the face of this organization, not only being the quarterback, but being the big signing that they brought in. Is it his fault that the team went 2-16? Of course not. No, it's not his fault no more than it would be anybody else's fault. Now, you can say that, hey, Henry Burris didn't connect on a lot of passes, but I'd say to you, absolutely, Henry Burris would overthrow from time to time. Sometimes his passes would come up short, but there were a lot of times where he hit his receivers right on the numbers, and they wouldn't catch the ball. Sometimes his offensive line wouldn't protect him. Sometimes the running game wouldn't get going. Sometimes the defense would let through the big plays, and sometimes the special teams wouldn't cover a kick return or a punt return or a missed field goal. This is a brand new team, and the majority of the players are rookies or with minimal CFL experience. To me, the biggest failure, if you want to call it that the REDBLACKS had this year was releasing Paris Jackson. Now, I know if you've heard these blogs before, I sound like a broken record, but here's the thing. In my opinion, what the REDBLACKS need, it isn't just to be piling up wins, but they need experience in that dressing room. And they've got people like Javon Johnson and Henry Burris and Anton McKenzie, but a good receiver with great experience like Paris Jackson, who's won championships, to talk to these younger receivers and to help them out. I think that was a huge misstep by the REDBLACKS. Now, I'm hoping in the offseason they can bring in some more experience because I think that's going to be the difference. A lot of the games, the REDBLACKS were in it just until the end. And yes, some of them were blowouts. But if you thought that the REDBLACKS were going to win the Grey Cup in their inaugural season, I want to know, what have you been taking? I think from a franchise standpoint, there's a lot of things that we can celebrate. The 9 sellouts in a row, the fact that I'm expecting the season ticket subscription to go up next year, and the fact that we're going to have some great acquisitions in the offseason. There's a lot to be hopeful for where this team is concerned. And as I go to every single game and I see more and more new faces, I can only be excited and more proud of what's happening in my city. Now, I understand that the REDBLACKS have recently released their offensive coordinator, Mike Gibson. Is that fair? Well, considering that the offense wasn't producing, I don't necessarily know if letting somebody go is fair or not, but I can say that I understand. What I also need to say is, listen, let's not make one person the fall guy. There are a lot of things that need to happen next year. And I'll call Coach Campbell into it as well and say that there were a lot of questionable decisions towards the end of the season where I was left scratching my head. And again, as a fan sitting in the stands or watching on television, it's easy to second guess somebody and say, hey, that doesn't make sense. I'm not the one who's seeing the game on the field or who's reviewed all of the tape. But at the same token, your coach still has to give you the best chance of winning. And in some of those games, I'm not sure if he did or not. So I think a complete reevaluation of the team is needed. And going back to Burris, I've been hearing talk about whether or not we should release him. And one of the most entertaining quotes I hear is Burris sucks. First of all, if you think Burris sucks, quite frankly, you're an idiot. The guy's won Grey Cup championships. He's won Grey Cup championships and he's won numerous awards. He doesn't suck. He had a lackluster season for sure, but don't judge one season against this man's entire career. So should you bring Burris back? I don't necessarily know if Burris should come back as a starter. That's not my call. And I don't know what training camp's going to look like and what other quarterbacks are going to be available. But I'll tell you this, I wouldn't let him go. Going back to that piece that I said in terms of experience, even if he doesn't come back as a starter, I'd want him on my sideline mentoring an up-and-coming quarterback like a DeMarco to make sure that we've got some good, solid experience and knowledge in that position. But that's just my opinion. I wish the Red Blacks well in 2015, and regardless of what happens, win, lose, or draw, I can guarantee you that I will be cheering them on from my sweet spot on the 40-yard line. Now, the playoffs are upon us, and you can count on me covering the playoffs for you as well. I will be back with my preview for the Eastern final as well as the Eastern and the Western semifinal, where the BC Lions travel to Montreal to take on the Alouettes, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders begin the defense of their title as they head to Commonwealth Stadium to take on the Eskimos. I'll also be covering the Eastern final and the Western finals, and I will also be live blogging from the Grey Cup in Vancouver. So please be sure to check that out. As always, you can check me out at CFL_fan, Facebook.com/WhittyWhittier, and WhittyWhittier.com. And until next time, thank you so much for checking out this blog, and that's my view from the 40.